Good morning. Welcome to a new uh, event for the Talk Tech with Turtle every other Tuesday at 10 or 5 p. Today, we have a very interesting topic. Many of us has been exposed to some of the content here, and I'm trying to move things a little bit closer to whatever is the current reality, which means what are the latest trends in the topics that we're going to be considering today? Even until yesterday, I still making updates. And if I can say also this morning, I was making updates about the presentation, it's just because how things are moving fast. What are these topics? So we're going to be talking about secure remote access and cyber resiliency. Extremely important topic for our 2026 and further. Um, let's start with secure remote access, part one. It's clear that the way that we work has changed, and it's changing in a very dramatic way. The amount of services that are coming and services based in cloud connectivity is mind-blowing. We have all kind of flavors of Studio 5000 today. So it's forcing us to think, okay, how I can implement all this work and help my customers in multiple sites at the same time. It's a different way to augment yourself, our system integrators, our partners overall. So imagine how that can be possible. You in a far remote area being able to connect in many ways. It doesn't matter what way, in many ways to sites that are also remote, not necessarily a sites in the middle of the city usually. So that is forcing us to think how we're going to do that. One option that it was missing for many years from the Rockwell portfolio was remote access. Now, when you think about remote access, it's going to force you to think in some basic architecture. So this is the basics, the most comprehensive way to talk about remote access. You are the user, you're far away, your plan or your remote point need to be accessed, and there is no other way for you to, you know, with a single cable, thousands of miles to make that connection. So how? Well, let's use Ethernet. Internet offer a lot of very good options, but the last thing that you want to use is your regular internet service provider to make that connection. So what it could be in the middle that can secure that connection? Cloud service. You're connecting to a cloud server somewhere, somehow, and from there you establish the end connection or the connection to the endpoint in the remote facility. This is in principle how every single possible remote access solution today works. That doesn't mean that it's going to stay like that for many years. Now, when we talk about the cloud key element about making this connection, we have to start being very precise. For our partners, we're talking about the factory talk hub. It's a cloud-based, Microsoft Azure base that is today hosting a lot of services from Rockwell. One of that services is remote access. Some of you have some level of familiarity with this idea of remote access through the hub, but I'm going to try to show you new things. I'm going to try to deliver a message about why it's so relevant to talk about the solution of remote access as a solution and not just as a single product. Let's say the basic architecture of this solution. So it's clear that you are an OEM, a system integrator, that's all the way to the left, and to the right, you have the end user. You are using your computer with some programs, Factory Talk, Remote Access Manager software. It's going to be one of the key elements here. You go through your firewall as it's being shown here. You make the connectivity to the cloud, and then you reach the end customer. So we use the hub. That's clear. Now, but what is in the other side? Well, we may have one endpoint. The first thing that we talk about in remote access is the Stratix 4300. Why we call it the endpoint? It's just because it's where you're going to end your remote connection. That's the access point to your customer network. And from there, you build up in any possible way what the customer may have already. Static switches, PLCs, drives, HMIs, and so on. It's very important to keep in mind what is this idea of the endpoint. Now, the solution is simple. You need two things. Number one, you need the software that will allow you to get access to the cloud. Basically, it's a connectivity or a connection that you do directly to the cloud from a browser. There is some local software that you can install if for some reason you want to do configuration to these devices that we call endpoints. That's the second part of the solution, the endpoint. So the Stratix 4300 is one of many possible pieces of hardware and software that can be used. Today, I'm going to make reference about the Stratix 4300 for obvious reasons. It's something practical, and customer has been exposed to this type of hardware for other vendors for many years. The 4300 lineup is something interesting. You have not only the traditional connection, the Cat5 or Cat6, copper, but you have also Wi-Fi, cellular. You have serial interfaces, and something that is standard today in all network devices from Rockwell, a gigabit Ethernet. Yesterday, we have a very interesting conversation here about 1 gig is enough for today applications. That could be matter of a different conversation. But as it is, the 4300 is the most flexible endpoint that we offer. Now, it's a general purpose device. What if you want to do something more specific, more oriented to data, or to access some kind of resources that you may have in a PC? There are more endpoints to consider. We have optics, it's a graphic terminal that has embedded remote access. So it's possible to establish communication remotely through the optics to your network. We have also compute the embedded edge compute unit for control logics, which means now your endpoint is in the same rack where is your PLC, and then we have industrial computer. So that's good. There is multiple ways to access and not compromising what the customer may need, reducing complexity, save some money, but have a remote access, a secure ways to remote access your facility. So how things change? Well, from the previous architecture, I was showing you the endpoint at the Stratix 4300. Let's say that we don't want that. Let's say that we want the compute unit from control logics. Or let's say that we want to use the optics as an endpoint. So in principle, seems to be easy, right? Seems to be practical and straightforward, the idea. What about the connectivity from the OEM and the system integrators? At this point, I'm talking about the endpoints and the customer side. What happened in the other side of this connection? Well, another endpoint that could be very useful is the runtime. So imagine a local computer at the customer side that is the endpoint. So in this case, the customer actually can establish a connection through the cloud to that computer, and from that computer with many resources, establish the connection that they're looking for. Imagine that one of the resources is Studio 5000. So this is a very interesting scenario because most of the time systems integrators carry on their own license of software, leaving the customer with empty hands. So the customer eventually, when these people move away, realize I need software at least to monitor, to see, to have some level of visibility over my controllers. Well, today, the customer can buy a Studio 5000, install it locally in a workstation, and then allow the system integrator or the person that is going to be working remotely access to that workstation. That's how runtime works. And it's part of the solution, it's part of the package. When you acquire remote access, it will be a clear option for you to add runtime. But another question that is very typical is, okay, well, this is good, but how many licenses I want to need? What is the level of investment that I have to do for giving me the rights to do this remote connectivity? Well, it's very straightforward. The license is based in the number of users connecting to your device. So you can have as many endpoint devices optics, awesome PLCs, Stripe 4300, runtime. It doesn't matter. What matters is how many concurrent connections of connections that happen at the same time are active. That's how the license is being charged. And that creates a different way to talk about remote access connectivity. Now, I want to take the opportunity to talk very briefly, or to show more than to talk, about one of these very interesting flavors that you have with remote access. So far, the endpoint that I was making reference at this point was the 4300. It's a Stratix, it's a router, it's a piece of hardware that you have to install someplace somehow. But what about data? What about the point of all this is not necessarily to establish the remote connection, but to establish a connection that can be used for data management, a smart way to deal with data. And that's what optics brings into the package. Uh, I'm not going to make reference about this. This is matter of a different conversation, but it's quite interesting the level of complexity that can be avoided when you take advantage of cloud tools, edge solutions, all this through remote access. There is a lot to mention about this, and I will advise you to call and be close to any of the specialists in this team to have details about some of these very interesting architectures. Okay, let's do a quick summary. So we know that Rockwell Automation has an extensive portfolio of network solutions. And we know that Rockwell Automation introduced something called Factory Talk a few years ago. Inside that is the remote access industrial equipment that allow people to do remote assistance, to improve maintenance capabilities. One of the most interesting parts is to augment yourself. Imagine you becoming an avatar at the local site. There's a lot of things to say. One key element is that this is a cloud connection style. Different type of people with different profiles can reach out endpoints and end devices. That's factory talk remote access. There's a lot to say about this. We have in Clark, New Jersey, an active demo that very soon is going to have up to 5 different type of endpoints. Uh, all this has to be embedded with security. So this by itself is a large topic, and I'm going to be talking about this in 2026. There is plenty more to say. I will invite you to reach out and keep digging into one of these options for remote access. But this is not about remote access, obviously. We have to keep moving, and let's actually talk about the part two of this event, cyber resiliency. So it's quite interesting that we allow ourselves to open back doors. Remote access back in the day was assumed as just that. We are overpassing a network. We're creating back doors. Uh, in principle, could be true, but today we are adding a level of scrutiny about the connections like never before for very specific reasons. A few years ago, we here in Turtle, we talk about tools, online tools that allow you to do the most interesting things, not necessarily for good reasons. Allow me to identify any vendor with simple keywords. Not only allow me to identify the vendor, but allow me to identify geographically where they are. And the most interesting part is what kind of devices they are open connected to the network. In this case, you can see all devices, but this is a tool that is very scary. But this is already all news. We've been used this type of argument for many years. We
Thank
overpass.
you very much.
We are in a different
Yeah,
level.
thank you, Peter.
And
I
Thanks
did.
very much,
everything
Peter.
just because remote access. When you think about remote access, the statistics cannot be more appealing. 65% of OT environments had insecure remote access conditions. Only in 2024, 45% of organizations with OT heavy environments use public networks, creating a significant attack surface. Can you imagine using a regular connection through Verizon or some other internet service provider to reach your facility? And only 13% of the organizations that are using this type of solutions are aware that they need to have some level of control over this remote access. um, connectivity. So then what we can do, there are specific OT principles. This is like a mantra that we live for. The principles are, number one, I have to keep my system running reliable and safely all the time. That's availability. Number two, I have to ensure that the process data and control commands are accurate. There is not a level of corruption because third agents or third parties. That's integrity. Also, in some degree, this is more important for IT than OT. That's why it's number three, protecting sensitive process information, and that's the level of confidentiality over the data that I have. So these are OT network principles. And I want to bring this and I want to make connections because any solution, any cybersecurity solution that we are promoting has to keep this in mind. One of the most important things is to keep the system running no matter what. That's why remote access is so important today. But these principles cannot be used acting by themselves. There are layers in your connection, in your network. There are different layers. You have devices, you have policies and procedures, and everything in between. So every single layer requires a specific type of work, a specific type of hardware, a specific type of software. Let me give you an X-ray of this idea that is called defense in depth. What exactly means to be aware of these layers? Let's go for the most extreme case. It's a physical security in one point when we talk about biometric identification, all the way down to the cloud access security and everything in between. As you can see, every single layer is demanding a specific type of service, software, and hardware. And there are specific reasons that we need to talk in this way. Now, something that makes this even more interesting is the standards. So we have some principles, some guidance, but there are standards that are forcing us to not only talk in specific matters, but actually design cybersecurity solution and deploy them in a specific order. It cannot be saying that I'm going to buy use a firewall and that's the end, the beginning and the end of my cybersecurity solution. That doesn't work in that way. On the screen, you have right now some of these standards. One of them is very familiar for us, the CPWE, because it's the architecture and design, the blueprint of the network itself. And another one is becoming very familiar for us just because the latest product that we're introducing to the market based in the IAC 62443. But from all this, one that commands and lead the way is Nieves. This is one of the most interesting standards because today policies, procedures, way to implement solutions will ask for us to talk how the Nieves leads things. There's a specific way and a specific logical way of thinking when you're deploying or offering solutions. So this by itself is a whole different conversation. But I want to actually jump to the other one that is important, and we talk about this all the time, the IAC 62443. But let me give you a little bit of help because sometimes we throw numbers, but we don't know exactly what's going on. So this is a very interesting way to present the standard. So there are different topics, different buckets, different numerals related with the standard, and vendors need to comply with every single one of them. Today, fortunately for us, Rockwell is the vendor that complies with the most buckets that you can see right now on screen. I'm going to take one, the concept and models. So there is a specific way to talk, and there is a specific way to present a cybersecurity solution. So we have to be familiar with the jargon, the symbols, and the process of logical establish how a solution can be presented, all the way to the end, the product security development life cycle requirements. We are familiar with the life cycle of a product, but the security development of that product integrated into a network has also a way to um, refer to. So this is the standard. As you can see, you may read here and there some buckets. We are getting into the patch management by itself. It's a security solution that we offer. But this is the standard and this is what we comply. And this is what we're forced to think about when we think about cybersecurity. Now, One consequence of this, complying with this standard, is a product that Rockwell released. It's something about security. There is hardware and there is software that we promote today with all our products, and we mentioned that the product is security ready. Now, SIP security introduced a level of segmentation that we didn't talk in the past. Segmentation for us in a network means VLANs, virtual local area network. But with SIP security and the standard 62443, we talk about zones. So every single box that you see in this screen is a zone, and the way that you communicate or link every zone is through conduits. That's a different way to see and access a network from the point of view of connectivity. But when we think that we got it, that's it. Now we have a way to move forward. Our networks are going to be very secure. Well, bad news. AI show up. But the flavor of AI that we have to be more concerned about is not the regular prompting that we do with ChatGPT or Gemini. We're far away from that. That's a little bit old when you think about AI terms. We're making reference about something called agentic AI. So today, these chatbots that are related with the AI agents, they're just tools. But imagine AI now taking these tools and by itself makes sense when to use them. If you're familiar with the terms agents and AI, you deploy specific payload that do some specific work for you. Reply automatically your emails. It make a connection with WhatsApp, and then it can create through marketing a campaign about contact that use WhatsApp. WhatsApp is one of the platforms that is using the most for a small business. It's free, it's open, and you reach a lot of people very quickly. But the problem with these things is the level of access that you're getting to people, phones, computers is reaching the OT network. Now, it's very important to make a differentiation here. I already introduced the first level. Is the traditional AI is based in pattern recognition, prediction, some level of classification with a structured data set. Agentic AI is further, is perceiving the environment, is reasoning, is executing actions, is learning from outcomes, and is using AI tools to speed up that process. Now you may ask, okay, so how the bad guys are using agentic AI? In many ways. Just give you an example. 5 examples. Number one, autonomous recon and mapping. Automatically, uh, the deployment of a bad actor recognize the network. But this is not one person remotely accessing the network. You may recall Stannex, the infamous attack over some nuclear facility in some point in the planet. That was an early stage of agentic AI, a program that was dormant and in some point in time activate itself through some executions and start communicating remotely findings. But now we're a little bit further. Now agentic AI not only do the recon and the mapping, but start deploying and using AI agents to do what is called the lateral movement. And in OT, something that we do very, very often. If you think about factory targeting browser and RS links, that's part of that lateral movement that we have over a network. Is this idea of east-west. When you talk about north and south, is when you're going from the levels, the OT levels, to the IT levels, or going all the way to the enterprise. Anyway, you can do a protocol aware payloads when the tool by itself, after recognizing how specific connections are being used, how specific data is shared between devices, how that data can be compromised. Everything by itself. Ironically, you can say, well, probably it's happening, it's going to happen, but as I said before, it's actively deployed. One of the most interesting cases just happened in November 15 when this site that is specialized in tracking AI activity uh, show a massive attack with a model executed recon, vulnerability discovery, credential harvesting, lateral movement, data collection, and the best case, it documented the whole bad operation by itself. It was some level of human intervention here and there, but nothing really beyond monitoring the activity. Okay, I scared you enough. What and how we face this? So one of the most important things that I have to say at this point is yes, attackers are using agentic AI against OT networks. It's happening. Bottom line. The danger here is not that defenders lack of AI. We have AI, as you're going to see next. The problem here is the OT environments, like no other environment, cannot safely allow autonomous defense. You cannot allow the system by itself to stop a connection because assume that is a problem with it. If when you do that, you stop a machine and you compromise the integrity and the safety of the operation, is when you realize we are not there yet. Agentic AI is still not the best way to attack people that are using it in our OT environments. That makes early detection, segmentation, and visibility non-negotiable. So when we talk about our customers about cybersecurity solutions, that's it. Early detection, we have a product for that. Segmentation, we have a product for that. And visibility, we have a product for that. Which product is this one? I'm going to show you only one that we actively use and we like to promote. Cyber Vision. Cyber Vision is a program that allows me to do many things. One of them is allow me to identify industrial assets, recognize what the devices are communicating, how they're doing, perform deep packet inspection and decode industrial protocols, create baselines about what is normal or not, and understand how the communication happens between every single level of my operation. So I can identify, I can analyze package, but to do that, I need to deploy some things. What I mean with some things? Well, I need to deploy sensors. But what if these sensors are part of the initial solution when you create your network? Instead of adding, what you're doing is you're enabling, you are activating. So imagine that you are deploying switches and now you say to your customer, these switches are ready to start working in a cybersecurity solution based on what I mentioned before. So this is why we promote Stratix 5800 a little bit different than any other switch that we have out there. So Stratix 5800 is part of the complex and wide solution that Cisco offers, and all that following Rockwell principles and Rockwell strategies, and in some specific cases, support. But okay, so let's talk about a quick summary of cyber vision. So we have different market, different type of customers. They ask us that I need to be sure that I can detect everything. Not only that I can detect, that I can segment it in a safety matters. The problem with this is it could be complex, and complexity is associated with an expensive solution. So what if, as I mentioned before, the solution that allows to fight back is already in our devices? All the switches has cyber vision embedded, and at the same time that the switches is connecting devices, the switch is helping us to recognize bad configurations, warnings, or some level of attack. This could be very complex. You can say, oh, this is chaotic. But in some way, you're reducing risk. You're shrinking the attack surface when you do it in this way, and you protect operations. Now, in this case, we use AI. Now, AI recognize patterns. So from the cows, we can extrapolate and see different operations, different sections of the network, and that would allow us to, in a smart way, dedicate resources, prioritize operations, create times where I can work, and many more things. There is a whole set of things that we can talk about cyber vision, and I will invite you to actively promote the solution that we have deployed in our headquarters. I mentioned before, the hardware related with cyber vision is part of the Rockwell portfolio still, but we can do a little bit forward. Rockwell doesn't have full access or full solutions in some specific niches. If the customer is heavily spender in Cisco and they want to stay with Cisco, we can carry on Rockwell principles and in some cases services, even if we have to move away for some specific type of hardware. But this is only one of many other solutions that we offer. Today, and this is where I was updating this presentation within the last week, instead of making reference about just one product and trying to push that product, we talk about the solution in our holistic matters. Let's say that instead of making reference of multiple products, we talk about a platform. Secure OT. This is not a product. It's an architecture, like in the same way that we saw back in the day, CPWE. This architecture allow me to do very important things. Allow me to do or have visibility, segmentation, secure remote access, and continuous monitoring to build into the OT network life cycle. So we are going to be talking about secure OT a lot. And once the customer identify the way to move forward and why it's important to be aware of the threats, remember the key elements here, detection, visibility, monitoring your network. Once the customer feel comfortable about where we're going, and the customer and I agree in the path forward based on standards, based on a specific logical way to think, then we move forward deploying the hardware, the software, and the services through contracts. So the question to ask at this point is, what will be your next move? We, as a promoters of the technology, and in many cases, our users and customers, I'm sorry, users of this technology, said step one, or even better, what is a step zero? So this is a step zero, step one. You need to reach a specific people. So the automation team has a dedicated group of people that specialize in this language, that specialize in actively understand and listen what the customer needs, trying to put one on one together, concrete the solution based in the problem that the customer may have, and help the customer to understand what kind of issues they may be experiencing. So actively engage with any of the uh, services team, any one of them, it will redirect you or actively start the conversation not only about cybersecurity, but other type of services that complement and augmented the cybersecurity solution that we're promoting. I hope that this conversation makes sense. I hope that everybody in this chat had the opportunity to learn something and carry on the message even further. Um, I will open up for your questions. So far, I would say thank you for watching. Okay.
William, thank you very much. And I thought that was a great presentation, by the way. So nice job.
Very thorough.
Um, I have a question just on the order of magnitude. Um, the Cyber Vision software, what kind of range of prices, what do they start at with that? And where do they go to? Like I said, what's the range for those packages for customers?
So I learned from someone in this group something interesting. You know, when you start talking about pricing, maybe you start with the wrong step. The order of magnitude of money that the customer lost after an event, cyber event, is so much that the solution itself, when you put the numbers together, is a tiny fraction. However, I can say that we have customers that are very sensitive about their budget, and they will say, I cannot spend more than $10,000 in a cybersecurity solution. Could you do something? So for some reason, we were able to break that number, and we have something under and plenty over. So that is like a reference for you. Is will be very specific for lower numbers and more complex and mature for
Well,
numbers greater than that. Yes.
and a lot of times too, it's how you could start and then develop a system. You don't necessarily have to do everything all at once. And that's kind of where I'm heading with that. I was just
It's
curious, how to get
exactly.
started. As long as you can get started, and then it can just evolve. You know what I
And I
mean?
will say
And
this
start.
much, Nick. Our customers already started when they are using static switches. So any old switches that is being replaced today, and for some reason the 5800 R model fit what the customer used to have, that customer, without even saying a single word of cybersecurity, is already promoting, installing, deploying
Mhm.
part of a cybersecurity solution. So that's the good part of this aspect of a
So
solution like Cyber Vision.
I've got another quick question too regarding cellular versus cloud or Ethernet-based connections. A lot of customers in the past have thought that the cellular was more secure because they won't allow, remoting in via a web or anything like that. What is your take on the cellular piece? Is it an option even, or is it worse or less, worse or better as far
Well,
as security?
it is an option, but it's not any service. So you cannot use your current program, service, whatever you have, your current carrier. There are a specific carrier and a specific package promoted for them, not only because security, but also because bandwidth. We know that anything that is over the air, it will compromise about capacity. And you have to be careful about that. You don't want to
Yeah.
be in the middle of something and losing links. So for Rockwell, there is a specific carrier. I won't mention it right now. I can mention it offline that they use, and a specific type of service and contract that they offer for OT environments, not only for security purpose, but also to reliability about one of the key elements in OT networks, and is your connection always should be alive. Thank you for that question. It was very important. I think that I will leave you. You have the opportunity to follow up my email, and many of you knows me. All of you knows me. So looking forward for more one-to-one interaction with every single one of you. Thank you, guys.
Take care. Thank you.